designers have to understand the technical domain much more.
When you have 10 times more developers than designers, how do you make design important in the organization when there are like 10 votes against vote of designer?
You have to be bold, you have to be loud. At least that's if you're not like a real design-led company where you have maybe even a designer in the C-level team. You always have to fight a little bit for your seat at the table, right?
Because design-driven development requires that everybody is a bit a designer. You are the responsible person to advocate for design, but that's the responsibility of everybody too. Because you can't build great products if developers don't care about design at all.
Hey, welcome to the new episode of Sidon Podcast. I'm Anastasia, Head of Product Management and Business Analysis at Sidon.
And I'm Yuri, CEO and co-founder of Sidon. We talk with bright minds who are in intersection of design and product management to learn from them and see their vision. Welcome.
Yeah. Today, we will dive into building design-centric culture and strategizing design team growth. We will explore these topics with Robin Titus. Robin is an experienced leader in product and design, having worked with startups, scale-ups, and corporations. Currently, he leads the product design team at Aiven, a triple unicorn scale-up based in Helsinki, Finland. Robin has founded 2 startups and is active as a mentor and coach for early stage ventures for a corporate incubator based in Germany. So, Robin, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Robin, you have very interesting background. It looks like you're in software development forever, like around 25 years or something, and you switched from product management to design management. So this is pretty rare experience and would be very interesting to learn from your vision. So how is in general managing design in very technical companies that works on very technical product for DevOps software engineering?
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously different from B2C environments. So, I mean, Aiven is a very tech-driven company. So it was founded by 4 great minds, 4 engineers in Helsinki, and I mean, maybe a little bit what we do to give some context. So, I mean, we kind of we operate an open source data platform, and so in a nutshell, we make it super easy for customers to run open source data services in the cloud. So we take care of all the backend tasks. We keep everything up to date. We keep it secure, reliable, scalable, and so on. So we take this pain of data infrastructure management away from our customers so that they can actually focus on building their product and and not worrying about the data infrastructure behind it. So and we do this for startups, but also for very large enterprises, and that's a pretty big stretch. And I mean, managing design for those types of companies is it's definitely a little bit different. It's designers have to understand the technical domain much more, I would say. So there's a longer learning path for members on my team to really get into the domain and really be able to support those kind of product teams and building for that very technical audience.
Yeah, I've tried working with AWS and Google Cloud, and I see that user experience is very different from what we are used for. And you have to just learn where to find stuff and how to use everything. Like if you would start to be a new user of this kind of systems, it takes quite a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, this is what my team currently focuses on, is like really this onboarding, kind of creating the first services on Aiven. There's a kind of a, I mean, we offer a web-based user interface, obviously, to get started. So that's the starting point for everyone. So there's a big focus on that for my team. But then our users don't just use the web interface. They use, their preferred tools. They use command line interfaces. They use Terraform, whatnot. So there are different ways different touch points to interact with our platform. And we also, look at those different touch points, like how can we make the experience around those touch points better. And you said it correctly. There's a lot of documentation involved around APIs, but also, so we have a big team of writers who just deal with that. And of course, there's a very, very close collaboration with my team on that.
So actually, do you also do some design for command line tools, or it's mostly done by developers? For example, command namings.
Not yet, but that is actually something we want to get into. So no, not now, but definitely something interesting to look at for the future. Yes.
Currently, you're managing designer without design background. I would say how it's important to have this design background to manage designer.
It definitely helps. I mean, I never studied design, so I'm a kind of a self-taught designer. Back in the days when I was in product, when I was starting my career as a in product management, I mean, I was always visualizing my ideas. I was always prototyping. I really like design. At the time, I was working for a big consultancy, Capgemini, and so I pitched to my boss that I want to do this. I want to kind of create this UX design team for Capgemini, and well, I managed to convince him, which was great. So I built one of the first design teams in Capgemini at the time. Yeah, so this is a little bit how I got into it. Coming from product management, transitioning into design, I think it helps a lot, especially in B2B. It only works when you have this very close collaboration with product managers, with engineers. You really form this team that works together. I think it's a very challenging field to be a product manager, because you're kind of always in between all the different parties, and you have to really coordinate and facilitate a lot. So just being aware of that, I think, really also helps you to kind of shape your design team in a way that you can really, have this good collaboration going.
Yeah, I agree. I heard that you have to change profession every 7 years to still grow. I myself used to be a business analyst, then switched to UX design, and then switched to management. So it helps to always learn new stuff and stay motivated, because if you're doing one thing for 20 years, perhaps it's really hard to get growing all the time.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, and how do you think requirements to the design role has changed? So you mentioned that product manager needs to kind of balance between different parties, but I see that currently expectations from designers also, like the level of expectations has risen, because the influence and impact of design on the product is really big. Like it's a more like a strategy rather than just making the pages look nice. And I see that expectation from designers is higher in terms of like understanding the business logic. In your case, it's your designers need to understand the technical side and understands the target audience and users, how they will use the system, and maybe be developers to some extent. So how would you say this evolution has changed, and what are current expectations from designers?
10 years ago, when I started out with the first small team, it was pretty much about building this practice around, building user interfaces, right? And of course, kind of starting to talk about user journeys, starting to talk about, we need to understand our users, we need to do user research, we need to do interviews, usability testing, and so on. But these were all, it was pretty much around, building user interfaces. So it was, UI design evolving into UX. And I think where we are now is, and this is also what we do. when we hire new people to our team, we're looking for product designers. This is how we call it. Okay, so we don't call it UX or UI designer anymore. We don't have these roles anymore in our organization. So we're product designers. So this also, so you have to be a solid designer, right? You need to know your skills and need to know that craft. But there's this whole product part to it, right?
Yeah.
It's you need to understand what it means to build a product. You need to understand the business, the users, and so on. And you need to, you will be working in a product team. Yeah, you will not be working in an agency where you work with a lot of other designers. It's like you work with engineers, you work with product managers, you work with a lot of stakeholders. That and in order to bring a product out to the customer. So yeah, so it's really, I think, the need for more soft skills has become just more and more important over the years. So you have to be really, you have to be good in stakeholder management. You have to be good in communication, presentation, facilitation, all these skills. This is actually what we look at when we hire. We of course look at the portfolios, but from the portfolios we can tell pretty quickly if people understand their craft. So we don't really test the craft when we give them some exercises or something. We actually want them to present something and to communicate and to and this is what we look at, like how good is someone in kind of communicating their work towards others, and because I think that's what's important in our business, and will probably become even more important.
That's true. Like testing those soft skills is pretty hard during hiring process. Like these things are noticeable in work during some period of time. You can see how they work, how they communicate, how they interact with all team members, how they like defend their design decisions, how they persuade people. So yeah, it's really hard to just have judgments based on portfolio, or even during these different parts of interviews. It's really hard to like grasp these nuances of soft skills.
I would say ideally you would want to test everything, but you have limited time on the interview, so you have to decide what parts you would like to test. But from our own experience, we had a chance when we hired a person with like 10 years of experience, nice portfolio, worked with huge corporations, and he was super cool with his soft skills and all the questions about different design challenges. But when actually the work started, the productivity was super slow, and we had to finish our collaboration after the trial period. So sometimes it's tricky because we are interviewing a lot of people, and I know that there are some designers who are so proficient in passing interviews and showing their soft skills and sharing the teamwork as their own work. There is always a risk too. But I usually want to see how people think, and not something they already learned what to answer on the interview, but how do they build their thought process. This kind of lateral thinking when they can generate ideas and also vet ideas based on what is viable, what's not.
I think it's always good to kind of let them present. We always ask for, show us something where you had to deal with complexity and with stakeholders. So and talk us through your process. So how did you really approach this, right? So show us the steps. Don't show us the end result. Show us how you got there and what happened on the way and what challenges appeared and so on. So I think this is exactly what you say. So how do you think about it? How do you work in these different iterations? How do you facilitate, how do you facilitate discussion? Like what do you present in order to have in the early stages of a project? What's the artifact that you show to start a discussion? And from that you can already tell, like, okay, if that is something that is already looks like a final product, that will probably not to lead to a good discussion. So I'm a big fan of low fidelity sketching in the start. So really, don't touch these tools. Don't draw something. You know, put something in front of people that they can discuss about that doesn't look like a finished thing. So I think that's important.
I would also think that the difference between just UI UX designer and product designer is the scope of metrics they are thinking about. Yeah, if you are UI designer, you measure just how beautiful is your design. If you are UX designer, you measure user satisfaction. But if you are a product designer, you have a lot of other metrics you have to think about, like how the business will be influenced by your decision and what is the feasibility of your ideas, how this is going to influence all the products in general, and what would all other stakeholders think about your ideas. Are they going to have a lot of overtimes because of your animation?
Yeah. That's correct. I agree.
Yeah, maybe we can also like having on this topic. What are your product metrics that you adopt, and how do you measure how do you assess the product design decisions currently?
I mean, so what we do is we of course try to use as much data as possible, and so we analyze the behavior that we can that we can get from our data. So we have tools in place, we have systems in place which allow us to analyze to a certain degree, like how what are certain usage patterns that we're seeing. So we're always trying to come to a baseline, um, and then set kind of a target, like how much do we want to improve this. So if it's like the onboarding, it's obvious, right? There can be a conversion rate, there can be like how much time. We can look at time, you can look at different metrics there. It's definitely something where we need to mature much more. So I'm not saying that everything is perfect here. It's so yeah. There's we're investing in this. We're also investing into educating the people in how to do this, and there's also more and more good support from the organization, with from our data team, with data analysts who can actually help us to work with this. Of course, we also talk with our users. We have different channels that we use. We try to. I mean, whenever there's an interview or a meeting with a customer, we try to get on it and also use and collect that kind of feedback and gain insights from it. Um, but it's that's not always easy, and um, definitely some area we have in our focus. This is where we need to become much better. So moving up the maturity curve.
Yeah, it also like a challenge not to stick into this kind of paralysis when you just concentrate on small improvements, like improve conversion rate, but like 5% or 10%. If you like make some dramatic UX change, it could like shift the metric really big or like have a dramatic change rather than like making this incremental small updates. Sometimes it's valid to like rediscover some flow rather than making some tweaks down the road.
Yeah, sometimes I see that products that scales super fast, they do not do a lot of optimization and a lot of measurements. They just launch new products, new great big features. And when the product is on the next stage and scaling, then they can focus on optimizations, because you can't focus on everything. Yeah, you have to decide what do you want to do: release version 2 or improve version 1 by 5%, something like that.
It depends on the roadmap, on the pace that we want to go forward with, and so I mean, again, definitely an area um, where design needs to also help a little bit in terms of scoping. Like, okay, so what's the what is this first deliverable that we're going to put out there, and then what is the next step, and so on, and then find good metrics to see, like, okay, how do we how do the different steps actually impact the metrics. So yeah, but it's not an easy task. I mean, I've been in discussions with other design leaders about metrics, and everyone is, especially in B2B, everyone is struggling with that. So it's not, it's not straightforward.
Why do you think they struggle?
First of all, it's like when you start, it's about discovery, right? How much time do you invest into discovery? And then also, how much time do you, once you delivered the feature, do you jump to the next feature, or do you actually,
Assess it
keep
properly.
on working on that feature and keep improving it? I think a lot of companies in our space all over, I think I've seen this in many organizations. It's always this, like, okay, we finish something and we go to the next thing, right? Instead of like really looking at how does that perform and how can we now make this even better. I think this is also a learning and a maturity thing of the whole product organization. We're definitely moving into the right direction here. So, but it's not on each and every project. So we also have the cases where we just, okay, there is some milestone, we need to get it done, and then we move to the next one. And of course, we try to keep an eye on it and see how it develops. But then we need to get the next improvement needs to, again, it needs to be, and it needs to get on the roadmap in order to be prioritized.
Do you think that that's a problem of lack of enough designers in most B2B products? Like if you have more people, you can assign somebody to work on optimization and other people would work on strategy or like product management. And because of that, there are not always not enough people. You have to decide where to focus.
Well, I think it's of course always great to have more people, but I think it's more like a culture and mindset thing. I think that's if you manage to build a product culture in your organization, that, and I'm not just talking about design or like all the other practices, right? Engineering and product management and whatnot. That is, really, yeah, taking these initiatives end to end, and also really owning the product, but also owning kind of a little bit the business. Um, I think that is, that actually helps, right? Then you kind of automatically make space for that, because you want to be successful, you want to have impact, right? I think it's about, if you don't just, if we just produce output, that's not good. It needs to be like, we need to look at the outcome for the customer, and we should keep going until that outcome is achieved. And just by delivering a feature and switching it on, that doesn't do the trick.
Yeah, that's also maybe based on the team you have, because sometimes for optimizations, you may need conversion rate optimization specialists, more researchers in your team, and when you're focused on growth, usually you hire more product designers who are 90% UI UX designers. And so this kind of people mindset usually is focusing on building new features and delivering results in this kind of area.
Yeah, I think it also in general, like data-driven approach, like a mindset in the company, rather like we talk about user-centric approach a lot. Like we need to build things that are needed for our customers, but how we make it better, it should be the kind of data-driven approach, like how we track performance of the features, how we track the behaviors, etc. And this is another like big process that should be part of culture in the company, and it's pretty hard to build.
It's like when you grow your team, did you change the type of people you started hiring? About seniority, about specialization with generalism? Do you see the changes? And what would you recommend for other B2B products when they start building their design teams? Hiring generalists or hiring specialists, hiring only seniors, or starting with balance of middle, maybe even junior designers?
I think in the beginning, it's important that you have a couple of really good specialists who can just set a good foundation and also can keep the engine running while you build your organization. and then you can bring other people on board, which are more generalist, which are more, looking more into strategic design and all the, more focused on discovery and so on. In the last company I worked for, we built a research team pretty early, and I think we were not at that point. We were not really ready for that. Now I'm doing it differently. I don't know if that's the right way, but this is how I'm doing it. Um, so right now we don't have a dedicated research team at the moment, but we definitely want to have that in the future. I think you first need to make sure that that you have a good foundation in terms of, because we need to deliver design in the end, right? um, and that engine just needs to work and run, and that needs to be able to scale, and also help the organization to scale. And then you can improve that by adding more people who are more specialized in discovery, in research, in all these different areas, to make your product decisions or the design decisions even better. So this is how I would always go about it. I would, yeah, try to build that strong foundation first. In terms of seniority, um, I think there's also this. In the beginning, it makes it's more about senior people, to get good senior people on the team who are, you know to build that foundation, and then you can add more junior roles, who can also then be, who can, I mean, it's also an opportunity then for other members on the team to mentor them, to coach them, to maybe grow into a leadership role. But that I would always kind of, once you have reached a certain size, like, I don't know, let's say 6 people, then you can, or 5 people, then you can also bring more junior people on the team.
I believe that there are a lot of work that doesn't require senior people, and senior people will hide this kind of work because they did it a lot of times before. But for junior, this is an excellent job they love to do because this is something they are learning to do. And in this case, you will have a lot of motivated people who love to do what they do.
What we, for example, did in Aiven is in the beginning, we invested a lot into building a strong design system, for example. And that's a great enabler for everyone, right? It's an enabler for all the other designers. It's an enabler for the engineers, the front end engineers, to just build faster. There's less discussion about the how should we do this. So it's not just about building components, it's also about providing guidelines and patterns and documentation around around the design system. So this where we invested a lot, and I think this really pays off. So with that, with that in place, you can have, a very efficient design engine running, and then you add more skills on top of that, and just expand your scope also in terms of what you can do and how you can support the different teams.
Yeah, it also aligns the team well. And in those cases, when you lack some expertise, as you mentioned that at some point of time you did not need user research expertise, or you've built the team but you were not yet there. Is there a case that sometimes you would consider outsourcing some parts, or some parts of design process, or some deliverables to kind of design agencies, or maybe freelancers to conduct some parts of the design process?
I've seen that working when I was, especially when I was working with some of the startups. Um, once you've reached a certain size, I think for me, it makes sense to have an in-house team. It's maybe also depends a bit on the domain. So, the domain that we are in really requires, this ramp up in the beginning, where you really need to understand what we're doing there. and that's of course that's just harder to establish, I would say, with a design agency. When it comes to research, definitely, yeah, definitely something that can be where you can use an agency as an extended workbench. Of course, also when you have specific design challenges and you just want to, you know, I mean, get someone in with a new perspective, maybe with a new method on how to look at things. Run a design sprint, run whatever. There are a lot of good methods out there, and sometimes you just tend to get stuck in your this is how we do it, and then it's I think also very valuable to bring in someone to just spark new ideas, new methods, and so on.
Yeah, I agree. From our experience, we have a client when they have like 30 designers already, and they still hire 5 designers from us because they were scaling so fast that they needed like give us 5 people, and that's all because they had much more work that they can normally onboard and hire and spend time. Like it takes months to build a team, and if you work with trusted partner whose domain is similar to yours, in this case, that can work.
Exactly. I mean, having someone independent, if that's someone internally or externally, being able to just visualize ideas is so valuable, right? Because I think this is really something, it's just not happening enough. When ideas are being discussed, there's a lot. I mean, people write a lot of documents and so on. And even designers sometimes have unlearned that skill. So I mean, our tools became so powerful over the last years, right? So everyone is kind of, I mean, everyone is super comfortable in creating something which looks super nice very quickly, very fast. But that's I believe that is, especially when you go into a new, when you when you want to start ideating, when you want to look at different alternatives, it sometimes drives the discussion into the wrong direction. So, you know, um, having someone who is comfortable in quickly visualizing, sketching ideas, and helping to get a real discussion going, that's really valuable.
Folks, I hope you're enjoying this podcast. It's brought to you by Siden, a digital product design agency. We make products successful through design. If you'd like to join our podcast, want to build partnerships with us, join our team, or you have a design challenge, feel free to reach out to us. And like, what can you do internally, like to make people switch to different perspectives? We at Siden had a rule before this COVID came and everybody started working from home. Most people, yeah, that everybody was switching their desks every 6 months or almost every month. We changed it like for different time periods. Just to make people sit with different people, to communicate, sometimes to work with different teams, not to stay in the same comfort zone. And we had mostly positive feedback. There were always some people who didn't like it because they like their place, and going to a different floor, to a different team, for introverts perhaps it's harder. But we were doing a lot of experiments like workshops, switching people between projects, just to bring new perspectives to design. In product, usually people get friends with developers, with product manager, they work on the same design system, they work for years on the same problem. Did you find any solutions to bring new perspectives?
Yeah, I think having some, I mean, having a certain rhythm where you just change and switch teams, and I think is really good. So I mean, we also do that a little bit because we have to, because we're not, I mean, there are way more teams than we have designers at the moment. So we are naturally have this case that you don't always work with the same team. So um, you might work with a team over 6 months or so, and but then you might go somewhere else. um, I mean, in Aiven, it's nice because it's like there's one foundation. We don't have multiple products. There's one product. Um, there's one design system, right? So so that always goes with you, right? So we all work with the same kind of foundation. But that definitely makes sense. Kind of just switching context a little bit, switching teams. What we also do, and this is also, I mean, of course, also during COVID, I did that a lot with my team. We're just experimenting a lot, right, with different methods. Like, here's this whatever this new way of doing a design sprint. Let's try it, right? Here is a new research technique which someone read about. So let's try it out, right? So I think it's yeah, just being curious, being like encouraging the team to also experiment, or maybe creating some space to do that, right? So I think it's always important to, if you just say it, some people might do it, some not. So you have to create the space for it. So there needs to be, let's dedicate this day, and we all come together and do it and try this out. Might not create any value, but it will spark some new ideas for other stuff. So I think it always helps.
You mentioned that you have more projects than you have designers, and that means that there are more developers perhaps in the company than designers, as usually.
Yeah, I mean, we have around, I mean, as I said, we have design team is 10 people at the moment, and we have about 100 developers. I mean, they all don't all build front end, so it's probably a little bit less, right? So like half of that is probably the mass of developers that we deal with.
When you have 10 times more developers than designers, how do you make design important in the organization when there are like 10 votes against vote of designer? But when you have to make decision where to.
I mean, yeah, it's a very good question. It's important to that design, gets out there and becomes visible, right? You have to be bold, you have to be loud, you have to communicate, and also, find opportunities where you can just expose like what, this is what we can do. We don't just create nice user interfaces. We also, we can also really help you in discovery. It's a lot of evangelism, or however you may call it. That's pretty much my job. So that's what I do. So I always try to see what we can do cross-functional, not just looking at design, like what do other departments do, how can we better work together, how can we create this culture, right? And of course, we're all, as designers, at least that's if you're not like a real design-led company where you have maybe even a designer in the C-level team, you always have to fight a little bit for your seat at the table, right? And yeah, you just need to be out there. You need to connect with the people, and then this comes naturally, and of course you also need to deliver good work, right? So if you just talk about it, so for example, if I go out there and talk about the double diamond process or something like that, everyone would say, yeah, great, but what does that mean for us? So I would rather go and discuss, like, okay, what's your process? How should we work, right? So sometimes we tend to go into this direction that we talk about design by the book, right? But that doesn't help, from my point of view. It's just it's nice, it looks nice usually, right, when we present something, but people cannot relate to it. You need to kind of, find other ways to make this work.
Because design-driven development requires that everybody is a bit a designer. You are the responsible person to advocate for design, but that's responsibility of everybody too, because you can't build great products if developers don't care about design at all.
But on the other hand, there could be implications that you will like stuck in micromanagement, or everyone will share their opinion on design because everyone will have this hat. Perhaps it will be in plus because you can share like new ideas will pop up, and as a designer, you can make your judgment which one is the best and just consider everyone's opinion. But it could pull the product in multiple directions in this case.
That's why soft skills are super important.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, so I actually like it very much when when engineers propose something, also like they quickly sketch something. I love that.
You mentioned the term design-driven organization. How can we measure that organization is design-driven and not just an average organization?
What is a design driven organization, right? I think it's like, for me, that's if if design is really part of the strategy and the communication. It's also, I mean, the whole communication towards the customers and the users. It's design. I mean, if design is a part of that, or it really drives that. So I think it's not so important, like if there's someone on C level or whatever level, is design. It's about this. It's for me. It's again. It's about this culture. Um, and you don't, I think, I mean, you should have, you need to take design seriously, right? Of course there should be a design department. That's for me kind of the prerequisite for that. So if you just have a couple of designers tightly, loosely, um, assigned to different teams, that probably doesn't do the trick.
And regarding the role of a design manager or design leader of the team, what would be his main focus on driving, being like a center of excellence or making design decisions and kind of have the final approval power on in what direction design will go for a company?
Definitely provide a design strategy, like how how will design define how design will actually help us to achieve our business goals, right? So making that, making that connection, I think that this is definitely one of the main things. And then, of course, making sure that, that you can, yeah, that you can support the business. So can you support the product teams? Um, and I mean, it's not, I mean, I would say it's not about having the final word on everything, when it comes to design. I think I see that pretty much in the teams. If you have truly empowered product teams, this is, they need to decide what's best to achieve that outcome. And the designer is just one, is just one player in that team. And there are other players, and they should take joint decisions, on what to do and on how to do it, and also in the end decide on, like, will we use this or that other design, because the insights or the data or the feedback shows us that this is the best direction. So, um, I think, like, if you as a design leader want to kind of be involved in everything and kind of make approvals and decisions, that this is micromanagement for me.
Is there anything that you would love to share based on your experience with other design leaders, what to focus on and how to build strong and scalable teams? What would be your recommendation?
As a design leader, don't just look at design and don't just try to kind of optimize the process within design. Work cross functional, right? Work with product managers, with engineering managers, and build a good product culture together with them. Help the team grow. It's also, I mean, an obvious thing, but, um, I mean, really try to create a plan for each of your team members. Like, um, talk very often, and and coach them. So I think it's, for, I mean, if you are a senior or a staff, designer, you definitely, you should be a mentor for others. You should be coaching, definitely.
This is actually my story. When I started design career, I started teaching design too. And thanks to that, I spent so much time reading books and researches and case studies because I knew that I will have a lesson tomorrow and I will not sleep, but I will have to read everything. And that helps me to grow till today. So I know I have to have some lessons to share some knowledge, and that motivates me to spend extra mile to get to the knowledge and not to be obsolete. Thanks.
Yeah.
Very good.
So thank you for joining us today. Today we had covered a lot. We did touch topics on expectations from designer role. We discussed building design teams, hiring people, building design vertical, and role of uh, head of design department, building culture, user centric, data driven, product centric. So we really grateful to you for contributing and sharing your experience and your personal ideas and stories. So thank you for joining us today, staying with us. And guys, looking this podcast, don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more conversations like this. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment because we love to hear from our listeners.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.